Back to a Song of Ice and Fire role-playing. Woo! Spring break.
Woo!
Last session, we boarded upon a few covered wagons stationed in House Caladan, Winter's Respite, which is the ancestral home of our family, and we set off on a glorious expedition, heading from ye old ancestral home along the rugged terrain of our forest and beyond that, like the hills and the Badlands, heading for the Boneway, which is rather nice, gentle sloping meadows with soft daisies and dandelions and like little lemonade stands stationed along the way. Boneway is really just a name to scare off people. Actually, turns out that the Boneway's reputation is thoroughly well deserved. After eventually making the trek, Team PC, and then some inconsequential narrator characters who don't really matter in the grand scheme of things because they're not us. We arrived at the Boneway, and everything we heard about it and more was true there. The sweltering heat, the winding stone pathway, the outcroppings of death and rotting corpses and despair. Naturally, we were not dissuaded because, damn it, we made up our minds. We're nobles, and whenever we decide to do something, we're gonna fucking do it. So there we were on our covered wagons, like the Oregon Trail, heading south towards House Yronwood. Those suckers who guard the way. Their old slogan was ripped and torn from them, and they had to come up with something new, but at least they have gates. Well, we had to make it there. Now, before we made it there, we had encounters. There were rabid dogs driven mad by festering disease that swarmed over the wagons. And Sir Alaric said, "Fuck you, dog. Whack, bad. Whack, bad." And my character said, "Fuck you, dog. Bad, 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 bad." And that was the end of the dogs. Good story all around. The dogs are normally disseminated out to weaken approaching groups, like merchant caravans or whatever that travel from Summerhall down to Yronwood. Oh, it's pleasant. And they get completely thrown into disarray. But as it turns out, we were prepared military-wise. But that did not stop the Dornish raiders from attempting a strike at night, laying out caltrops on the road, which my character managed to spot, and then ambushers struck from the hills with arrows. And so then we put out our torches. So then they tried to set our wagons ablaze, or at least create some more light around the area. And then our expertly directed marksmen took care of their marksmen. And the knights, well, they waited and they tried. And they died. 2 fled out of the 4. However, Evren, Caladan, the son of Ser Cousin, took a horrific injury, 1 shot straight to his shoulder. And he has been maimed. Regrettable, but he's young still. He'll bounce back. Youthful, like skin tension or whatever. I'm sure he'll be fine. And so afterwards, we continued traveling, and we were running out of supplies. Good thing we brought the wagons, even though they're a little slower. And we made it to House Yronwood, and we got to drink the nice, refreshing water, which was only refreshing because it was actually water when we didn't really have any. And some of us managed to recover from our heat exhaustion, and we arrived at House Yronwood. Now, as a reminder, we traveled to House Yronwood in response to a letter we received addressed by Lord Farian Yronwood, requesting that the most prestigious lords and ladies of House Caladan come down to visit for mutual interest purposes. I won't cite the letter here. I'm doing a recap, not fucking essay. And we stopped in and said hello. Lord Farian was not in. Instead, it was his older son. We met, we broke bread, and we had the spices. And the end of last session sort of set the stage for what exciting activity we might have this time around, which is full of political intrigue and drama, and there's several people involved. There's Lothan Yronwood, who's the older Yronwood son, and he is so damn attractive, and he's got like the blue eyes. I mean, he came straight out of Arrakis. And we have Lady Tessa Blackmont, who's fucking clad in plate mail with a massive greatsword, and there she is at the table with the food, and she is ready to wreck house. And then we have Rosette Yronwood, which, I mean, she's typical of Dornish ladies. which is certainly atypical of how the rest of the Seven Kingdoms rolls. Anyway, suppose that's where we can begin, somewhere around then. The snake hunt, I say with all of the due sarcasm and snark I can muster, because I still don't personally believe we're hunting snakes, is afoot. And theoretically, we're going to be going on a most glorious expedition. Now that we're in Dorne, having already traveled here. I have my hopes. Dun dun.
I think we all have our hopes.
Yes. Because we will begin after you had a day, I believe, to just sort of do whatever you really liked around the castle, hang out while the snake hunt was sort of set up. You are in one party with just you and Rosette Yronwood, the younger sister to Lothan Yronwood, who's going to lead your sort of hunting party out into the Red Mountains to hunt the snakes that are out there. This is something you'll learn that you will leave very early on, because at the basically you'll be hunting a day, because the snakes are not really out at night. It's cold and they don't like that. And you will also need to go out early, so you can have the hunts basically spotted in two. There will be one hunt at the beginning in the lower parts of the mountains. Then you will have a break at midday because it's too hot to be outside. So you'll find there'll be like a designated shadowed spot, maybe a cave or some such, where you will have a break, a few hours of basically just sitting down, resting, being near water to not die. And then you'll continue further on in the afternoon, further up to hunt snakes further up into the mountains. And then you'll generally return to here with whatever you caught. There'll be a few hunting parties. Some of them just have normal dudes, NPC people who you don't really know. But the two main ones are yours and Lothan's, who's also bringing Tessa Blackmont and some of his own retainers. It has perhaps been suggested that Lady Catelyn and Lady Nalia might want to stay home because they don't really seem to be, fit for this sort of thing.
I would agree with that, and I would be so bold as a player to suggest that Lady Nalia's husband-to-be should also stay behind with them so that they're not alone.
A young Evren would love to go, but sadly he's still is told by the maester to stay in his damn bed. And
what's the maester's verdict on him?
Well, he's
Has he lost the dice?
he's probably never going to recover completely.
Oh.
He was lucky to be alive from that shot.
No.
Caught an artery.
Yep.
It's hard to say at this point, but this maester certainly isn't good enough in the healing arts to really, like, generally people die from this, but he seemed to be tough and he might pull through.
Well,
There's not enough leeches alive in Dorne.
They
to
don't
fix
have
this
them
fellow.
here, as it turns out.
Too damn hot.
There's not many leeches because there's not a lot of animals that sort of trough through the water. Not a lot of deer and whatnot that usually feed them. Their medicine is much more herbal based, of like all sorts of extracts from desert plants that they mix together and put in your wound, then burn like hell.
Well,
we need
time for training montage.
Before we go, Nima would like to ask the Maester a question if it's true about.
Oh,
something.
sure, he's available. He hasn't been here for that long.
He would like to know if the rumor about sour wine and snake poison is true, or if it's just.
What will she ask the maester?
If it's true that sour wine works against snake poison.
Some people believe that it's a folk remedy, but the Citadel does not recognize such a connection.
Well, Nima will trust the Maester on that.
That was her last mistake.
Well, you know, that's the
Pulled out
common.
dagger.
That's the common folk saying that, and you know, why would sour wine work?
Exactly. Why would it?
So, you've been informed that you should all trot up early in the morning and, like, be ready and whatnot. There's, like, a breakfast served of Dornish stuff, and you're even allowed to. So there's, like, a table with food, and you can pack your like whatever lunch box you want. Basically.
Oh, lunchbox.
Lunchboxes.
Because you won't be home.
I got a He-Man lunchbox.
I got a Star Wars.
Mine is.
Mine's just a
Mine is
Tupperware
mi-
box.
You'll also not be riding up there because you're not actually going that far, as it turns out. They're taking you up the Red Mountains. It's not really practical to bring horses in that area, and they don't really. You would basically need sand steeds, and that's really not a horse you just sort of give
a
to
Larrick
people.
on.
They're very personal. Those who have them, very personalized horses, and they're also very expensive. So if they broke a leg and doing something like this, you'd be sad.
And that's how you provoked a fight in Yronwood Castle.
This is my lunchbox here. Let's open this up. And,
It's a fuck Dorne edition.
no, it's delicious.
The limited platinum fuck Dorne edition.
It's like a Dorne, more like Reach Colony.
Dorne, more like Born.
It's like an image of Dorne and Reach with like Reach written over the entire thing.
Yeah.
All right, so we can pack our own lunches.
Yes, it's wonderful. Well, it's all weird food, except for like the bread and cheese. Seems like they've been trying to accommodate for you.
Dorne is
Usually
like
in
the-
your hunts, you would have like retainers and pack horses who would like roast things for you and stuff. But then again, usual Westerosi sort of hunts also last for like maybe 2 weeks of just running around in the forest hunting.
Yeah.
With like a huge party of like 100 people following you around with all things you might need.
And we drink a lot.
While this is more you going into the mountains with short spears to stab like poisonous animals, as it turns out.
Ugh. Can I have a big
What
spear?
if you don't want to use spear?
No, like you traditionally use a spear, like a forked spear, but you can use whatever you want.
I'm not proficient in spear.
Can I have a very big spear?
But you certainly gather like over here, like in the courtyard. It'll be like over here with
I don't know how to use a spear.
these. Go.
Sure you do. Your fighting skill dictates that you know how to use a spear.
If you're good at fighting, you can generally use most weapons.
Yeah, but I don't get the same bonuses, do
Oh,
I?
you don't get bonus dice
Oh, dear.
Bonus dice.
because you're not trained in spears. And if you use a difficult to use spear like a pike, then you'll get penalty dice because you don't have the training necessary. But a standard spear is you point at people and stab with it, so it's not that
Fine.
difficult. They will certainly lend you spears if you don't need spears.
It would be pretty cool if Neva just cut the head off a snake. I was like, here you go.
You're not trying to cut the head off. You're not trying to like either. Well, I guess either you do cut the head off, or you try to capture it, and then like
I'm not gonna capture shit. It's gonna come home dead.
because you don't want to
Would it be-
destroy it, because then you can't eat it later.
I just want a nice set of boots.
You need a lot of snakes for boots, but sure. I mean, that's not unheard of.
I'm just saying stuff. Sorry.
It's- you know, you could skin snakes and make boots if that's the kind of thing you're into.
I won't use a spear. I'll use a fireplace poker.
I need to get into character. Sorry.
My castle forged fireplace poker. That's my improvised weapon that I carry around.
Brought it around. Yeah.
I mean, I have to have the improvised weapon somehow. And that might as well be good enough.
I mean, everything we have is castle forged.
Yeah. I mean, probably not the fire poker.
I know, like you
I mean,
got
why not? At this
Gold
Because
point?
you
makes
probably
everything.
wouldn't like to make like we have fire like castle forged horseshoes.
But that'd be
Cows.
great. Like it would be great though. Like the Caladan house seal on everything. It'd be so prestigious.
I
there's
know
some-
he generally have better things to do, like swords and halberds and stuff.
His better things are what his lords dictate. All right, anyway. So we pack our lunches and we gather in the courtyard in preparation for our early morning illustrious snake hunt.
Lane is over here. Dark, are you with us? Is that a thing, or are you
Yeah, for now.
good? You can't like? Are you on map tools? Do you?
I got map tools.
Okay, good. You just had to move your thing, so I'm moving it now. Yeah, Rosette certainly is here, and she is sort of dressed in what seems to be almost like veils of white silk. The other Dohertys seem to have similar kind of garb, probably to protect them against like flying sand and wind and against the quite terrible sun that's up here. And she will also, if any of you are wearing very heavy armor, say that that's not the traditional gear for a snake hunt, but she believes that if you're used to wearing it, you probably should.
Yeah, I'm used to wearing it.
The only person who's wearing very heavy armor would be Sarah Cousin.
Yeah.
I will be
You notice
opting for
that Lady Tessa also is wearing her heavy armor
Oh.
over there in the other group,
Bitch is ready for
talking
a
with
fight.
themselves.
And maybe she saw you and was like, well, if that monstrosity is going to lumber around.
Or maybe Lothan gave her the same description that Rosette just gave you, and they just was like, oh, I'm more comfortable in my armor.
If it's comfortable, then you should wear whatever you like.
Yeah, she will basically say to you that the first thing we're going to go to do is to go to some nearby springs. Usually we don't take outsiders there because, well, there's water there, and so she sort of stops and says, but we're going to go there because the
What?
snakes generally surround the... She seems to just be going off on a tangent there, but she's trying very hard to be very professional about this whole thing, even though she's young. We'll be going there because there's water, and the snakes like to be there. They're looking for rodents or dogs who come up to drink and are exhausted. Then they sort of lunge out, bite them, and retreat, letting the poison kill the animals. We'll basically be trying to provoke them. They're very difficult to see when they're just sort of laying there, so you generally want to provoke them, move away from their bite, and then cut the head off.
How do we provoke them?
Get close to the water.
That sounds like something for the young people. Desmond is going to sit on a rock somewhere.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I can't imagine that the snakes can get through plate, so I think I'm good.
You say that.
Yeah, they're just going to get like through the cracks and kill me, aren't they? It's just going to be my luck.
They can generally. They would go for, well,
Go for the neck.
they're probably not used to it. You might scare them with all the glittering of the reflections and sun, but well, maybe if you're
They
used
would
to wearing it, I'm sure it would. Well,
They will certainly hear you approach for sure, Sarah Cousin. There's no way you could not alert a snake, what with all that ruckus.
he smiles and nods. Well, regardless, I'm told to instruct you. Then we'll have a bit of a trek further up. Hopefully, we catch something there, where we'll find a cave entrance. Goes into the cave system under Yronwood, one of the exits, as it is. Don't go too far in, and if you do, she looks at you and says, never follow the water downstream. We have never heard of anyone who followed the water downstream. So that would be a bad idea. Then afterwards, we're going to go further up into the mountains, where there are some valleys. You can't really see them unless you know where they are, because the terrain is, well, very steep and cliffy. So if you just look over it, it might look flat, but it's really full of holes. There we're gonna encounter the most and the biggest ones, and then we'll move back down in the evening, afternoon. So, any questions?
How long until we reach the water?
Oh, well, if you're thirsty, you should drink here. It might be, well, probably an hour before we get to the first place. It shouldn't take too long.
Okay.
Then it'll be, well, might spend half an hour there and then continue up for an hour and a half to a resting point and then stay there for 3 hours before we continue on.
How many snakes have you caught?
You think, well...
Bree levels like a critical eye at the girl.
11 to this day. I have been allowed to go on most of the hunts. There's generally supposed to be one of us left, but, well, I think Lothan made an exception. Also, at this point, I don't think I would care much to stay here.
Bree tilts. One of you left. Like, gives like a confused look.
Yeah, well, one of the house in the keep to have the command, so to speak. But his father and brother are off. And he probably knows he couldn't keep me here.
You would steal along anyway, even if he told you to stay behind.
He shrugs. He's not my dad.
Bree will let out a genuine smile at that.
He smiles back at Bree.
Doesn't rolls his eyes. Ugh.
So, well, let's get going. She looks over and seems to kind of want to get going before the others do.
Bree will shrug. She has moved this Rosette individual off the dislike section to like the indifferent one. She's ready to go along.
She will also hand you leather skin bags and say, for the snakes.
Bree will take one.
You can put them in when you catch them. Or kill them. And then she'll begin to show you sort of into the mountains.
Okay, Bree, having taken the entirety of yesterday to just lay in her room and go, bad, will follow with far more energy than she had upon arriving here.
She'll leave everyone else here.
Desmond's like, what did you find out? Bad.
Lanus
Yes,
will not have anywhere near as much energy as Brian has.
Yes, but what about like the secrets? What if they're planning? Bad. They're planning a bed? Bad.
Well, that sounds like a wedding.
Oh.
I'm like your oracle now.
What does this
The
mean?
augury has only a 25% chance of being correct, but... Yeah. Well, she leads sort of ahead. She seems very eager. Probably also eager to please in a way, to be a good party leader, so to speak. As she begins to make her way up, trying to find the most secure way. This area has a lot of loose rocks and such, but she seems to know some paths up.
Bree will pay attention to how she walks in order to try and emulate Rosette. It has been some time since she's been in these wasteland mountainous areas.
Though she probably has more experience in them than anyone else, really. Yeah. You have also been offered leather sandals, if you did not have yourself.
Bree would ask, if I wear the sandal instead of a boot, could a snake not easily bite my foot?
They usually wouldn't try to go for the foot. They're up in, the water comes up from below. It is sort of warm, and the snakes generally curl around the warm little spires that the water makes. They generally wouldn't be in your leg height.
So where would they try to bite then? Like, I'm sure you've
Arms,
seen...
throat, under shoulders, that sort of thing.
That's
So-
terrifying.
They go for warm areas.
So there's nothing in the water then that would try and target the feet then? Like the snakes would eat it all?
Yeah,
Okay. Bree will wear the sandals. Whatever.
they seem to be made to sort of, they're sort of like silk covering the foot. They seem to be made to walk in this sort of terrain. As you walk up, you pass a lot of sort of small thorny bushes with little red berries. She'll know that you shouldn't eat them, sort of offhandedly. And on the way, she'll begin talking, even though no one really asks, about the tunnels underneath and how they have always been Yronwood's strongest defense. That basically you can use the tunnels to get anywhere if you know where they go and how to follow them. And she'll read now and again that they have never heard of anyone who followed the water downstream. You ever only hear stories of people who got out by following the water upstream. Well, presumably because those who walked downstream didn't come back.
House Yronwood's greatest defense, but no one has managed to break through the walls of the castle, right?
Mr. Buchan says, well, that's not entirely true. The walls haven't been broken, but they're very low. I should look. And Yronwood is a very flat castle.
Right, I remember you mentioning that.
It says the Reachlanders. She looks at you, sort of. I mean,
Bree slants a brow.
the invasion of Daeron Targaryen had ladders that they brought along the Stoneway. And they scaled the keep. No one of the family died in the attack, though, because when it was clear that they couldn't win, they just, well, the garrison vanished into the mountains, in the tunnels. Only select members of the house are told the ways, though.
Ah. And so, should we ever get lost and the worst occur, you would be able to guide whoever was with you through the caves, then?
She looks a little bit embarrassed and says, well, I mean, not exactly. My father hasn't shown me the ways yet. I'm sure he will, though.
Bree frowns. Must it be your father who shows you the ways? I'm sure your brothers know, right?
I think so, yeah. They say I'm still young.
Bree will say, well, you're not young enough to go onto a snake hunt and fight for your family and endanger yourself. And she sort of like gestures, like remembering that Rosette wore like her armor and stuff at the table.
Because that's what I would say. But they won't let me down there.
Bree like snorts, not at her, but at like the people who are denying Rosette.
She smiles at you. She seems to like you. She's a very talkative girl. Where did you get those scars?
Bree says, well, pointedly to say, several years ago I traveled with my father along the Stoneway to Yronwood for one of those peace meetings. I was captured by Dornish raiders and held captive for many moons. 34, I do believe.
Oh.
I was scarred there.
Goes quiet.
Bree, like, just sort of, like, blinks at her with, like, her ice blue topaz eyes, pretty much expecting Rosette to go quiet after that.